Before we get to the story, I'd like to say thanks so much for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading cosmic horror related stories every single day. So if that sounds good, please drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a lot, especially when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. I work night shift security at the Greenville Planetarium. It's not a glamorous job, but I like it. The building is small, quiet, and I spend most of my time walking empty hallways with a flashlight, making sure nobody broke in to steal our mediocre telescope or mess with the projector in the main dome. The pay is terrible, but after 5 years, it feels like home. My name is Brian. I'm 27, live alone in a studio apartment across town, and I've always been into space stuff, not in a serious way. I'm not smart enough to be an astronomer or anything like that. I just like looking up at the stars and thinking about how big everything is. It makes my problems feel smaller, you know? That's what I was doing on the night it started. It was around 2 in the morning, middle of September. I'd finished my rounds and stepped outside for some air. The parking lot was empty except for my beat-up Honda, and the sky was clear. Perfect night for stargazing. I leaned against the wall near the back entrance, letting the cool air wake me up. I'd been doing this job long enough that I had a routine. Check the main dome, check the gift shop, check the bathrooms, check the offices, then outside for 15 minutes to look at the actual sky instead of the fake one we projected for school groups. I was looking at Orion when I noticed something off. A cluster of stars near the belt looked dimmer than usual. I squinted, trying to figure out what I was seeing. The dark spots weren't random. They formed a shape, a number, 7. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, looked again. Still there. Perfect number 7, made from stars that had just gone dark. Not covered by clouds, not blocked by anything, just dark. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, staring at it. My brain kept trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was my eyes. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. Maybe I'd been spending too much time staring at screens. I even went back inside and splashed cold water on my face, convinced that when I went back out, it would be gone. It wasn't. Eventually, I went back inside and finished my shift. I didn't tell anyone. What would I even say? Hey, I think the stars are forming numbers. They'd think I was losing it. Hell, I thought I was losing it. I drove home as the sun came up, went to bed, and had nightmares about falling into empty space. The next night, I practically ran outside when 2 o'clock hit. I went outside at the same time. The number was still there, but it had moved to a different part of the sky, and it wasn't a 7 anymore. It was a 6. Different constellation, same impossible thing. Stars just gone, leaving perfect darkness in the shape of a number. My hands started shaking. This wasn't my imagination. This was real. I took out my phone and tried to photograph it, but it didn't show up on the screen. The camera just captured normal stars, like nothing was wrong. But when I looked with my own eyes, there it was, 6, clear as day. I checked every night after that. Each time, the number dropped by 1, 7, 6, 5. A countdown in the sky that the whole world could see if they bothered to look up. Most people didn't at first. We're all too busy staring at our phones to notice what's happening above our heads. But that changed fast. It took about a week before other people started noticing. Social media exploded first. Amateur astronomers posting pictures, asking if anyone else was seeing it. The photos never worked. but enough people were reporting the same thing that it couldn't be ignored. Then the news picked it up. Scientists went on TV and tried to explain it away. Atmospheric phenomenon, they said. Mass hallucination. Camera tricks. One guy claimed it was a viral marketing campaign for a movie. But everyone could see it with their own eyes. You didn't need a telescope or special equipment. Just look up on a clear night, and there it was. A giant number in the sky, getting smaller every 24 hours. By the time it hit 5, people were starting to panic. My co-worker Graham brought it up during shift change. He was trying to joke about it, but his voice was tight. Graham was usually the kind of guy who laughed at everything, found humor in any situation. Seeing him scared made it worse somehow. "So, you've been watching the Sky Show?" he asked, jingling his keys nervously. "Yeah," I said. "What do you think happens when it hits 0? I didn't have an answer for him. Neither of us did. We just stood there in the parking lot, not looking at each other, both of us staring up at the 5 hanging in the darkness above us. "Maybe nothing," Graham finally said. "Maybe it's just weird space stuff, universe being strange." "Maybe," I said, not believing it. Society started splitting into groups. There were people who were terrified, convinced this was the end of the world. There were people who thought it was all a hoax, some kind of elaborate prank or government conspiracy. And there were people trying desperately to act like everything was normal, going to work and running errands and pretending the sky wasn't counting down to something. I fell into the last group mostly. What else could I do? I still had bills to pay. The planetarium was still open for tours during the day, even though attendance had dropped. People didn't want to think about space right now. My sister Becca called me when the number was at 4. She was crying. "Brian, are you seeing this? Are you watching the sky?" "I'm seeing it," I said. "What's happening? What does it mean?" She had 2 kids, ages 6 and 8. I could hear them in the background, asking her questions she couldn't answer. "I don't know, Becca. Should I take the kids somewhere? Should we leave town? Rob thinks we should drive to his parents' place upstate, but I don't know if that's any safer. Is anywhere safe? Where would you go?" She didn't have an answer for that. Nowhere felt safe. Whatever this was, it was everywhere. The whole sky, the whole world, maybe the whole universe. After we hung up, I sat into my apartment and stared at the wall. I'd started noticing other changes, small things, wrong things. Sleep felt different. When I closed my eyes, my dreams weren't the usual random nonsense. They were just black, uniform darkness, like staring at a wall with my eyes shut. I'd wake up and feel like no time had passed, like I'd just blinked instead of sleeping for 8 hours. Food tasted off, not spoiled or rotten, just less, like someone had turned down the flavor on everything. I made my usual breakfast, and it was like eating cardboard that vaguely remembered being toast. Coffee didn't wake me up anymore. It just tasted like hot brown water. Colors looked duller during the day. The sky wasn't as blue. The grass wasn't as green. Everything had this washed-out quality, like an old photograph that had been sitting in the sun too long. And people seemed different. Everyone walked around like zombies, going through the motions of their daily routines, but not really there. Cashiers rang up groceries with blank expressions. Drivers sat at green lights until someone honked. We were all just waiting, watching the sky each night, counting down with the universe. When the number hit 3, things got worse. I was in the break room at the planetarium pouring coffee when I dropped the pot. Not on purpose, it just slipped from my hand. But it didn't fall straight down. It fell at an angle, like gravity had shifted a few degrees to the left. The pot hit the floor and shattered, and the coffee spread out in a direction that felt wrong. I stood there staring at it, my heart pounding. Gravity was broken. Not a lot. Not enough that you'd float away, or anything dramatic like that. Just enough to notice. Objects fell at slightly wrong angles. When you walked, your weight distributed differently. It felt like being drunk. Except I was completely sober. I started testing it, dropped my pen, watched it fall crooked, tossed my keys, watched them arc weird. Every time, the same wrong angle, like the world had been tilted without anyone noticing. Sound was wrong too. I'd talk and hear my voice echo in rooms that shouldn't have echoes. Footsteps in the empty hallways sounded too loud, too close. The silence between sounds felt heavier, like the air was thickening. Sometimes I'd hear things that weren't there. Whispers in empty rooms. Doors closing when I was alone in the building. The planetarium's equipment started malfunctioning. The projector in the main dome would turn on by itself in the middle of the night and show views of space that didn't match any real location. Stars in configurations I'd never seen. Planets that looked almost right, but had the wrong number of moons or rings in strange colors. Galaxies that spiraled the wrong direction. One night, I walked into the dome and found it displaying something I still can't explain. The whole ceiling showed Earth, but it was wrong. The continents were shaped differently. There were land masses I didn't recognize. I stood there for 20 minutes watching it before I finally turned the projector off manually. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hit the button. Graham stopped showing up to work after that. I called him a few times, but he never answered. His voicemail was full. I drove by his apartment once, and his car was gone. I kept going to work because what else was I going to do? Sit in my apartment and wait. At least at the planetarium, I felt like I was doing something, even if it was just walking empty halls and pretending everything was normal. When the countdown reached 2, mass panic set in. The highways were jammed with people trying to flee. To where? I don't know. Away. Anywhere. Somewhere that felt safer, even though there was nowhere safe. Some people went to bunkers they'd built in their backyards. Churches filled up with people praying. Others just shut down completely, stopped going outside, stopped answering their phones. The news stopped broadcasting regular programs. It was all countdown coverage, all the time. Experts arguing, preachers preaching, people crying. Nobody had answers. The government issued statements telling everyone to stay calm, but you could hear the fear in their voices. I tried calling Becca again. No answer. I got in my car and drove to her house across town. The roads were chaos. Abandoned cars everywhere, some still running with the doors hanging open. People wandering in the middle of the street, not even looking where they were going. I had to swerve around a guy just standing there, staring up at the sky. When I got to Becca's house, the front door was unlocked. I went inside calling her name. Nothing. The kids' toys were scattered on the living room floor. Dishes in the sink. TV still on. Plain static. But no Becca. No kids. No note. No sign of struggle. They were just gone. I searched every room, called their names, checked the garage, the backyard. Nothing. It was like they just vanished mid-activity. Becca's purse was on the kitchen counter, the kids' shoes by the door, Rob's jacket on the couch. I sat on her couch for a while, trying to figure out what to do. The house was so quiet. I kept expecting to hear the kids running around upstairs, Becca calling them for dinner, but there was nothing. Eventually, I drove back to the planetarium. If the world was going to end, I wanted to be somewhere familiar when it happened. The final night arrived faster than I expected. I sat outside in the parking lot, my back against the brick wall of the planetarium, watching the one in the sky. It was massive now, impossible to miss. It blocked out entire sections of stars, this huge black void in the shape of a number. I'd brought a six-pack of beer with me, thinking maybe it would help. It didn't. It just made everything feel more surreal. I tried to remember good moments from my life. Birthday parties, high school graduation, the first time I kissed someone. That summer, I spent at my uncle's lake house, Christmas mornings with Becca when we were kids. But the memories felt distant and unreal, like I was remembering scenes from a movie I'd watched once, instead of things that had actually happened to me. The silence was absolute. No crickets, no wind, no distant traffic. The whole world was holding its breath. Just me and the countdown and the dark sky. My watch said it was almost midnight. I'd always wondered why midnight specifically. Why not noon? Why not some random time? But I guess when you're counting down the universe, the exact time doesn't matter. The one began to fade. I held my breath. Then, 0. Nothing happened. I sat there, waiting for the end, waiting for the sky to fall, or the ground to open up, or reality to just stop. But nothing changed. The darkness where the number had been just hung there, empty. Minutes passed, 5, then 10, then 15. I started to wonder if this was it. If this was the end. Just sitting here forever in silence, waiting for something that would never come. Then I noticed something. The stars were coming back. All of them, slowly filling in the spaces where the numbers had been. I felt a wave of relief, so strong it made me dizzy. It was over. Whatever it was over. We'd survived. But then I looked closer. The stars weren't in the right places. Orion wasn't where it should be. The Big Dipper was gone entirely, replaced by a constellation I didn't recognize. The North Star had moved. The patterns I'd known my entire life, the patterns humans had used for thousands of years to navigate, were different. And the moon was gone, just gone. No crater-covered orb hanging in the sky, just empty space where it should have been. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, no signal, but the date still showed the same day, same time, September 23rd, 11:47, like nothing had happened, like the last minute hadn't reset everything. I stood up on legs that barely worked and went inside the planetarium. Everything looked the same. Same floors, same walls, same posters on the bulletin board, same water stain on the ceiling tile, same coffee mug I'd left on the desk. But it felt hollow, like a stage set, like someone had recreated the building from memory, but missed some essential detail that made it real. That's when I understood. The countdown wasn't to the end. It was to a reset. The universe hadn't ended. It had started over. But something had gone wrong. It hadn't started over correctly. Details were missing. Things were close, but not quite right. Like a copy of a copy of a copy, each version losing a little bit of the original. The people who vanished, Becca, Graham, all the others, maybe they were still out there somewhere. Maybe they'd been reset too. Maybe they didn't even know anything had changed. Or maybe I was the only one left who remembered it was supposed to be different. I spent the next 3 days alone in the planetarium, barely eating, barely sleeping, just waiting to see what would happen next. The sun came up and went down, but the sky stayed wrong. No moon, different stars, colors that were almost right, but slightly off. On the 4th day, Graham came back to work. He walked in during my shift like nothing had happened, whistling a tune I didn't recognize. Same uniform, same gait, same little wave he always gave me when we crossed paths. "Hey Brian," he said. "Quiet night?" I stared at him. "Where have you been?" He looked confused. "What do you mean? I've been here, same as always." "You disappeared. When the countdown hit 3, you stopped coming to work." He laughed, but it sounded wrong. Too bright, too cheerful, like someone trying to remember how to laugh. "Countdown? What countdown? You feeling okay, man? Maybe you should take a few days off. You look exhausted." His eyes were blue. They'd always been brown, dark brown, almost black. I'd known Graham for 3 years. I knew what color his eyes were. These weren't his eyes. I didn't argue with him. What would be the point? Becca called that afternoon. Her voice was identical, every inflection exactly the same as I remembered. But her speech patterns were slightly off. She paused in weird places, emphasized the wrong words. "Hey Brian, just checking in." The kids wanted to say hi. I heard children's voices in the background, but they sounded flat, recorded, like someone had played a tape. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be? We're all fine here. You should come visit soon." The kids missed their Uncle Brian. She'd never called me Uncle Brian before. She always just said Brian. Always. I said I would, and hung up. She didn't remember the countdown, didn't remember disappearing, didn't remember being terrified for her children. Over the next week, more people started reappearing. The town filled back up. Traffic returned to normal. Stores reopened. Everyone went back to their routines like nothing had happened. But they were all wrong. Little differences, small errors. A neighbor I'd known for years had a different laugh. The barista at my usual coffee shop had a mole on the opposite cheek. The grocery store was laid out slightly differently. Aisles in the wrong order. Stop signs were on different corners. The park downtown had different trees, and nobody else noticed. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. I tried bringing it up once. Asked Graham if he noticed anything different about the world. He just looked at me like I was crazy and changed the subject. I kept my mouth shut after that and went to work every night. What else could I do? Tell people the universe had reset and they were all copies. They'd think I was crazy. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I'd had some kind of breakdown and imagined the whole thing. But I don't think so. I think something broke, something fundamental. And when it tried to put itself back together, it made mistakes. The worst part is not knowing why. Was it natural? Something the universe just does every few billion years, like taking a breath? Or did someone push a button somewhere, decide it was time to start over? And if it happened once, will it happen again? I watch the sky every night now. I can't help it. Same parking lot, same brick wall, same routine. Looking up at stars that are almost right, in constellations that are close to what they should be, but not quite. Last night, I noticed something. One star, off near the eastern horizon, looked dimmer than the others. I stared at it for a long time, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. But I don't think I am. It might be forming a shape. It might be nothing. I guess I'll find out soon enough. The universe has already counted down once. I have this terrible feeling it's getting ready to do it again. And next time, I don't think it's going to bother putting things back. Maybe it'll just leave everything dark. Maybe that's what zero really means. Not a reset, just nothing. I'll keep watching, keep waiting. What else can I do? If you're reading this and you start seeing numbers in the sky, don't ignore them. Don't let people tell you it's not real. Pay attention to the details around you. Remember what your friend's eyes look like. Remember how your town is laid out. Remember the sky. Because once it resets, that might be the only proof you have that any of it was real in the first place. And when it hits zero again, I don't think any of us are coming back.